Hey everybody, it's Aldo Gandhi, and I just want to let you know really quickly that our swag shop is reopened. DeepDishTees.com is where you go, and that's tees with T-E-E-S. Clever name, guys. They're the new home of our merchandise. You can get t-shirts, you can get caps, you can get coffee mugs, you can get hoodies, you can get all sorts of good stuff, and you'll help out the bar room with the purchase. So head over to DeepDishTees.com. The following program is a production of the Barroom Network. It is intended for all audiences.
Doug Buffone.
This defense sucks. This is moronic.
John Buffone.
If your best run plays are coming off end arounds, there's a problem.
Doug was behind the microphone first. He never held back.
Very difficult to score when your offense is on the bench. When your defense is out there giving up 70, 80, 70, 64-yard drives.
Now, it's his nephew, John, and there's no holding this Buffone back either.
An offensive-minded coach that's running an offense that got 9.5 yards. A beaten-up defense that isn't necessarily performing in key situations.
I've had it. I have had it. I want somebody to get kicked in the ass.
How many games can you rattle off that involve the team running the ball 7 times and they win? I can't think of any.
I don't mind you getting beat. I got my ass whipped many times. But I tell you, I took somebody down with me.
Because Bears fans wanted to believe in the worst way that Chicago had a stable, competitive franchise. And this is what we got.
It's Buffone 55, the John Buffone Show.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Buffone 55, a fast-paced approach at breaking down the Chicago Bears. I'm your host, John Buffone, and filling in for Alyssa once again is Aldo Gandia. Our continued thoughts are with Alyssa as she continues to tend to some family issues. But Aldo, how you doing? This is your second week. You in your groove yet?
No, I'm not in my groove yet, but I am feeling good. You know why? Because I spoke with Greg Gabriel today on his show. Greg Gabriel, of course, the former director of scouting for the Chicago Bears for 10 seasons. And he and I had a really good show, and he was a lot more optimistic about what could happen in the future than we Chicago Bears fans have. So I feel a little better. Maybe you'll make me feel even better, John.
If you're looking for positivity, you're gonna need to change. Don't change it. Don't change the station. What, do people even have dials anymore? Anyway, regardless of that, do not click us off. But this is not going to be the beacon of positivity. We are not going to be a bastion of hope. This is just raw, real emotion, and that's what you're gonna get. But we have a really great guest lined up to help us better understand the Detroit Lions, the Bears' first divisional foe of the season. But just in case this is someone's first time listening or watching this show, Aldo, can you give us a quick rundown of how this works?
Absolutely. Buffone 55 has 3 segments. We start by learning about the Bears' upcoming opponent from someone who follows them closely. And today we have Jeff Risdon, the managing editor over at Lions Wire and the co-host of the Detroit Lions podcast. He also has a lot of other duties, but those I think are the only 2 associated with the Detroit Lions. Then that's followed by our B55 segment. That's where I ask John 5 questions, and his responses have to be timed to within 55 seconds. That, of course, is John's way of paying tribute to the great Doug Buffone and his uncle, his mentor, and a man who played 15 seasons with the Bears and wore number 55. We then finish things up by going into Buffone's basement, where we will have a Bears therapy session. And joining us for that session will be Neil Stopchinski of the Draft on Tap show. But until then, John, why don't you take it away?
Looking forward to that. Thank you, Aldo. Like you said, our guest tonight is the managing editor over at Lions Wire and the co-host of the Detroit Lions podcast. We now welcome Jeff Risdon to the show. Jeff, how you doing? Appreciate you being on.
Good to be with you. Thanks for having me on, guys. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And so the first divisional matchup for the Bears this season is against the Detroit Lions. And teams kind of, I don't want to say trending in opposite directions, but there are maybe some different attitudes about these teams. Although the Lions have started 0-3, these have not been the traditional unless, I mean, depending on your outlook, I guess, traditional Lions losses, because they haven't been blown out. They've been very competitive. What is, what has been the outlook on this team so far?
So most people in Detroit and most of the media in Detroit, and I'm certainly part of it, realize that this is the beginning of something that's not going to happen overnight. Everything that was in Detroit needed to be burned down, and the new regime, Brad Holmes as the general manager, Dan Campbell as the head coach, have done that. They are rebuilding. It is a rebuilding year. Having said that, they're a fun young team. Like one of the biggest things about the Detroit Lions in the last few years under Matt Patricia and even Jim Caldwell before that, they were boring. They were not an engaging or particularly interesting team if you weren't part of Detroit. Now you look at the Lions, and maybe it's the head coach, talking about the biting the kneecaps and everything, but they're kind of a fun team. They got a lot of youthful energy. They're the youngest team in the NFL now after dropping Jamie Collins yesterday. They officially dropped to the lowest, which is good. They're a lot more athletic than they have been. They're a lot more energetic and proactive, especially on defense, than they have been. So you're going to see a different Detroit team. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be better than the Detroit teams you've seen recently, but they're different. And for us in Detroit, different is really good. Change was welcome. Change was needed. I assume y'all know that sentiment fairly well in Chicago too. And we'll be talking about that, I'm sure. The Lions actually did it. And we're going through the growing pains of the change now, but the arrow is absolutely pointing up. And they've been competitive. This is a team that does not quit. They fight. They play smart. They play aggressive, and they honestly, God, they have probably a little bit more talent than most folks realize, and just not in some of the spots where they need it.
I want to ask you about Dan Campbell, because obviously he comes onto the scene. He's talking about biting people's kneecaps, and everyone's talking about the preseason press conference, or when he first is announced as the Detroit Lions head coach, and maybe he wasn't taken seriously by national media, local media, maybe even, but this team is obviously playing for him. You can tell that they are. So what has been the early reaction to Dan Campbell, maybe from a fan's point of view, and the outlook of, can this guy actually take them to where they want to go?
I think most people have realized fairly quickly that he's playing a role there. When he's talking to the media and doing the wild antics. I mean, and it's fun, and it's certainly part of his personality. He talks. The one day he brought that, he opened his press conference by telling us his Starbucks order, and it's 2 venti lattes with double shots of cappuccino in each one. I almost had a heart attack on the spot there, sitting in the media tent with him. But he's fun like that. But when you listen to his press conference and when you watch him coach and listen to him talk to the other coaches, like this is an old school football coach in the vein of, I don't want to say Pete Carroll, but he's got that sort of Pete Carroll energy to him, where everything's competition and he's trying to get the best out of players. He's surrounded himself with a ton of former players as assistant coaches. Antoine Randall L., Deuce Staley, Anthony Lynn is the offensive coordinator, Aaron Glenn is the defensive coordinator, Hank Fraley is the offensive line coach. A ton of recognizable guys, and the players appreciate that. They're like, you know what? These guys did it. And that was something that the old coaching staff under Matt Patricia, they had a bunch of dudes that nobody ever really heard of. Did that guy play? Did he played middle school football in 1977? Okay, why should I listen to him? And it's really going over very well with the players, certainly with the players that have been here for a while. And there's not many of those left. And that's a good thing, by the way. And look, you're gonna get your sound bites, your quips out of him, and you're gonna have fun with it. And he's going to have fun with that too. But you got to understand that there is an actual football mind going on there. He went down and intricately broke down the different hand placements on a tight end approaching a defensive end and how the defensive end needs to counter it. And it was like something you would pay money to see on an internet program, with like a real pro breaking it down. I think people forget that he played in the NFL for a long time. He played under Bill Parcells. There's more under the hood than there might first appear from the outside there.
A quick follow-up to that, because coaching has been a hot topic in Chicago, as you may imagine, in the last couple of weeks. So when you have Matt Nagy, the head coach of the Chicago Bears, he wants to be the offensive coordinator. He wants to be the play caller. He wants to be the head coach. And if he would have it his way, he'd probably be playing quarterback as well. But does Dan Campbell have more of that, I am the leader and I'm going to put people in the right positions to do their job, where you see maybe a Mike Vrabel do, or a Mike Tomlin do, where it's just like, I am the leader of men, I can do the time management, I can do the game situations, and everybody else is doing what they need to do? Is that kind of his approach to the game?
Yeah, he definitely knows how to delegate and respects the delegation of authority. We had a coach in Detroit, Jim Schwartz, who talked a good game about that and tried to be the overwhelming leader, but he couldn't help but put his fingers in every pie, sort of the way that you're talking about Nagy. And I agree with that from the outside, by the way, having watched this past weekend's games. He's good at communicating to his assistant coaches what they need to tell the players. Now, he will be direct about it too, but he lets them do their own thing. As long as they're getting their work done and getting the job done the way that he needs it, he's not going to be a guy who's going to go over and just reiterate what his defensive coordinator says, or, step on the toes of the linebackers coach because he didn't like something. He's going to trust them to do their job. And I think that's something that's gone over very well with the coaching staff. From a media standpoint, it's very different, again, from what we're used to in Detroit. I hate to say that not every, because everything is so new and because everything that was old was so bad, it's easy to get enamored with the newness of it. But I've been around enough other teams. I've covered the Browns, I've covered the Texans when they were really good before and with Bill O'Brien, and I've seen a lot of other teams. I've been around the Colts a lot as a successful organization. I've even been down to Bourbonnais a few times, not in a few years, but I understand the different dynamics from different teams, and what I see from Dan Campbell and how he's approaching it with his assistants. I do think it's going to work. And I think that most people in that building believe that it's going to work, and they believe in Dan Campbell. It can be a little bit of a tougher sell to the outside, and being 0-3 as a start and losing a game the way that they did this past weekend in epic, unbelievable fashion. It's not easy. They need a win desperately, just as Chicago does. And that's one of the reasons why I think this game, it's not going to get a lot of national attention. I think this is a fascinating matchup. Honestly, I really do.
It really is. And, both teams, well, the Lions in an era of change, the Bears trying to capitalize on whatever window is there. If it's, and personally, I think it might be closed, but for the Lions, one of the big changes this year was at quarterback. You lose Matthew Stafford in a trade, you get a lot of draft capital back, but now it's Jared Goff. What has been the early return on him? Because I'm sure there are things that Matt Stafford could do that Jared Goff cannot do. And so what has been the ultimate change when it comes to that offense?
Yeah, and you all saw what what Matthew Stafford can do. Jared Goff can't do that. and that's one of the reasons why the Rams made that move. Jared Goff is not as good as Matthew Stafford. We'll get that right out of the way, right out of the top. And you'll have a hard time finding anybody who will say differently, probably including Goff himself. He realizes that he's different. The Jared Goff experience for Detroit has been that he gives you one good half per game, and the other half you absolutely understand why Sean McVay hated him and got rid of him. And the first half against Baltimore is a great example of that. He made so many poor decisions and choices with the football. The Lions have a good offensive line. They didn't play great against Baltimore, but it's the strength of the team. And the fact that they give him a good pocket and he still goes to his very first read on every throw, even if it's not the best matchup, it's very frustrating. Now, when he lets it slide a little and lives a little and tries a little, he can play quarterback. There is legitimate talent in Jared Goff, more than I thought there was, to be honest with you. We need to see a lot more of it, and we need to see it more consistently in Detroit. Otherwise, he's not going to win, and it's not going to be a long-term thing for him. But as far as arm strength goes, people who dog on his arm strength, dude can throw he's not Matthew Stafford. He's not Jay Cutler in arm strength, but he's not. This isn't Kellen Moore out here. This isn't Kyle Orton out here. This is somebody who has a legitimate arm. He just needs to trust it more. So we're frustrated, but we also understand that it could be worse. I mean, 2 years ago when Matthew Stafford broke his back, it was Jeff Driscoll and David Blau. He's better than those guys. He gives them a better chance to win most of the time. But it's a very different change. Matthew Stafford, for all the stat padford that he got from a significant portion of the Detroit Lions fan base, I think most people miss him. And just the game that Sunday's game is a great example. Matthew Stafford wins that football game. I don't know how he defends a 66-yard field goal, but I feel like the Lions would have a win now if Matthew Stafford was their quarterback. I think they'd have one. I don't think they'd have three, but I think they'd have one.
Well, we'll see what they can do with those draft picks and see what Goff can do for the rest of the season. I want to talk about some of the weapons that Goff has, and a big talking point going into the season was the wide receiving core for this Detroit Lions squad, where not a lot of recognizable names. You're looking over the thing, and you're like, they lose Golladay, and they lose Marvin Jones. You're like, so who the hell is going to be playing for the Detroit Lions this year? Can you talk about what the Bears can expect from a wide receiving core, or is this simply going to be the TJ Hawkinson show?
We hope it's more of the TJ Hawkinson show. So through the first 2 weeks, he led all NFL tight ends in targets and receptions. He got 2 targets, caught them both for 10 yards against Baltimore, which had the worst tight end defense in the league entering the game. That's on Goff, by the way. That's not on Hawkinson. That's one of the reasons why we're a little down on Goff. The number one wide receiver is Khalif Raymond. Give yourself a cookie if you knew who Khalif Raymond was before I said his name. Having said that, I'm not going to. The guy's a high effort. He can fly. The problem is he's about 5'10", about 185 pounds. If you touch him, he will get pushed off course. He will get ridden out of bounds. But he's a niche player. But with Tyrell Williams out, he's the number one wide receiver on the team. Amon-Ra St. Brown, rookie, 4th round rookie, third or fourth round. I can't keep track. Too many things going on in my head. Physical presence. Works the underneath, works as a possession receiver. Possession receiver plus is the best way to describe him. All of his targets are going to be between like 7 and 12 yards, and he's not going to go down with the first contact very easily, but he's not a dynamic field stretching guy. They brought in Trinity Benson. They traded for him from Denver just before cutdowns. Another guy, pure vertical speed on the outside, but we haven't seen a lot else out of him. Quintez Cephas is probably the most talented all-around guy. Big Ten fans remember him from Wisconsin. Big target, good strength, good body control. Runs a 4.7 40 and plays like he runs a 4.7 40. So he's not a guy that's going to get a lot of separation. A lot of Lions fans like to try to compare him and try to make him into the next Kenny Golladay. Golladay was both more talented as a route runner and a little bit faster. But Cephas has proven reliable at what he does, and Goff does look for him. Didn't do it as well against Baltimore. They did a pretty good job of taking him away and making Khalif Freeman the number one receiver. So, I expect to see Johnson matched up against Cephas, and then you'll see Raymond maybe try to get some shots elsewhere. Goff is pretty good about identifying like where the strength of the defense is and avoiding that. If that's a strength, I guess. So I kind of think that the matchup you'll see him try to go with is St. Brown over the middle out of the slot, and then Raymond working the outside in tandem routes with that and working in tandem off of Hawkinson, who's really, really good.
Yeah, so talking about some of those, the history of these weapons here, Detroit has had an issue having that mainstay running back since probably, I guess you could say, Barry Sanders, if you want to go the whole way back there. But it's not for lack of trying. They go out and they get a job at best, an Amir Abdullah, a Kerryon Johnson, and now DeAndre Swift. If from a Bears fan point of view, is DeAndre Swift the guy that is going to be that mainstay running back in Detroit, or is he going to join that list that I kind of just rambled off there?
Okay. He's better than those guys and has proven that he's got more juice than those guys, just health-wise and everything. I'll defend Kerryon Johnson a little bit. That guy was really good until he got hurt. He just can't stay healthy, and that's why he's bouncing around the league now. Swift is a very talented guy, but they do run a timeshare. It's a 1-2 punch with Jamal Williams. In fact, Jamal has started all 3 games. That was actually a big thing in Dan Campbell's press conferences. How come DeAndre Swift isn't a starter? That's the fun that we get in Detroit with some of the questions. Swift has more carries. He actually leads the team in pass targets as well. He's one ahead of Hawkinson, so that sort of tells you where the passing thing. And Williams, by the way, is fifth in that. So they do throw to their backs and tight ends quite a bit. Swift is a talented guy. He played great against Baltimore. He really did. He just didn't get the ball enough. It was this case. He had 6 touches before halftime. One of them was a gadget play where he tried to throw the ball back and did his best Ryan Mallett impression with the gigantic wide base. It was awful. They were lucky that it wasn't a pick six the other way. After halftime, he touched the ball 15 times, and it was not coincidental that the Lions offense perked up a lot when it ran more through Swift. But Jamal Williams is a very big part of the team. He's an integral part. He is also the most fun human being I've been around in a football context in a long time. Dude enjoys life and makes it vibrant for everybody around him, and they need that. Like it's tough to be 0-3. It's tough to be looking up at these teams. They're not going to be favored in any game, probably until Pittsburgh comes down, because I think Pittsburgh's awful. And that's you got to have that sort of joy de vivre life. And Dan Campbell brings that, and Jamal Williams brings that too. And it's a very welcome uplift. And by the way, he's still pretty good between the tackles too, and he can still catch. So not to downplay what Swift does, but don't forget about Jamal Williams here.
Absolutely. Something to look out for. Dual threats, or I should say a dual back system. Somebody might have a big game there. So coming off of the Browns game, the Bears defense, the performance is going to go unnoticed because of what the offense did, but they did rack up 5 sacks. They did give Baker Mayfield some fits in the first 3 quarters. Can we expect that momentum to roll into Detroit? Will there be opportunities to exploit anyone on that defensive or that offensive front for the Lions?
Yeah, and I did watch the Bears-Browns game twice, actually, from a Browns perspective, because I do cover the Browns as well, and I was very impressed, especially in the first half, the play design and the scheming from the Chicago defense. I thought that they did some very good things. I thought that they did a great job of attacking Jedrick Wills at left tackle when he was injured and couldn't move. I thought you see the wounded animal, you attack it, and I thought they did a very good job of that. The overload blitz, the time where they had 2 guys rush at the same time, on that you can do that sort of thing. So Penei Sewell is at left tackle. He's the rookie. He's very celebrated. He did not have a good game against Baltimore. But generally, he's going to be really good, guys. Really good. I still think he's going to be better at right tackle in the long run. His lack of length got exposed a little bit against Baltimore. They did a pretty good job with their rookie Odafe Oweh of sort of staying out and keeping at arm's distance and making him lunge a little bit and get off balance. And you can do that. Khalil Mack can do that. He's a talented guy. That they have guys that can do that in Chicago. So I worry about that. Matt Nelson on the other side is the same Matt Nelson who played defensive end for Iowa 4 years ago. He is now the starting right tackle with Taylor Decker out. Decker won't be back this week, unfortunately, which is too bad because he's really good. And he was coming off a really, really strong season last year. So they're shuffled a little bit. Inside, Jonah Jackson had a rotten game against Baltimore, but the first 2 weeks he was really good at left guard. Frank Ragnow is the best center in the NFL. I don't care. I'll take your money. He's phenomenal. He's due an All-Pro this year. He made the Pro Bowl last year. He's going to be an All-Pro first teamer this year, and is playing up to it. Halapula Vadi Vaitai is the right tackle or right guard. He was the right tackle last year. He sucked. They moved him inside. He's better. He's not great, but he's a perfectly fine starting right guard and a pretty darn good run blocker. And he cleans out, and he's also really good at cleaning out linebackers against a 3-man front. Now, Akeem Hicks is going to protect some of that. Y'all have some talent up front. That's going to be a fun matchup to watch because it is the strength of the Lions team. Darren Fells as a tight end, pretty darn good guy for his age still, can still line up in line. They do use him and Hawkinson both in line at the same time and will throw or run out of the formation. So they do have some ability to counter what the Bears front does. I mean, look, no disparaging the Bears front here from me. That's a talented unit, but they're going to have to work at it a little bit more than they did against Cleveland. Now Cleveland, look, they don't have Joel Bitonio. I personally thought that the J.C. Treader had an awful game at center for Cleveland. I thought the Bears had a distinct advantage there that they won't have this time. They'll have to move that attack out a little bit more against the guards in this one.
Should be an interesting chess match. I'm really looking forward to that one. I do want to switch sides of the ball real quick, though, because The Bears offense gave up 9 sacks last week, which is why I said the 5 sacks from the defense might be overshadowed.
Yeah.
What can the Bears expect if they keep going with this 5-man protection that they seem to love so much and maybe not running and not moving the pocket? What can the Bears offensive line expect from the Detroit front?
They're gonna expect trouble, quite honestly, because the Lions bring 5 or 6 more than any other team in the NFL. They rush 5 or 6 on 56% of their defensive snaps. If you try to block them straight up, look, they're not the most talented group. Romeo Okwara can play. He's not Myles Garrett. He's not even Jadeveon Clowney, but he's in that next tier. Like, don't sleep on this guy. He got 10 sacks last year with no schematic help whatsoever. So he has some ability. His younger brother Julian, much more of a one-dimensional guy, but he can sizzle off the edge. They have something in Aleem McNeil as their rookie nose tackle. That guy is fun. Bears fans would love him if he was in Chicago. He's a up and coming young player. And one of the other things that I like about it, so one of the things that scares Lions fans about Justin Fields is his ability to take off. Well, they just played Lamar Jackson, and Lamar got one 30-yard run early in the game, and then they did a phenomenal job of making him sit in the pocket and beat them from the pocket and get the pass rush to him under control. That's going to work against Chicago too. No offense, guys, but it is.
You're right. 100%.
And you're going to see guys like Michael Brockers and Levi Onwuzurike get free at the end, and they do a good job of mixing up and dropping down a fourth lineman down and then rushing. Alex Anzelo might come from the middle off the blitz. You might see Derek Barnes looping around the outside. You might see Tracy Walker blitzing out of the slot from a safety. The defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn does a really good job of the old school Bill Parcells, the Parcells without Belichick defense. If you're familiar with that, that's kind of what they run. It's creative. It can be overly aggressive and leave you exposed at times, especially with the cornerbacks that they have. And we'll probably talk about that in a minute. But they have the ability to get to the passer. It's much improved and much more proactive pass rushing. They do some stunts. They do some twists. They will do an overload blitz every now and then. They're going to have, Cody Whitehair and company, they're going to have to be sharp. Jermaine Ifedi's going to have to play a lot better than he did last week. And I won't even pile on Jason Peters because Myles Garrett's superhuman. If you're not superhuman, you're going to have problems with him. Again, you're getting a little bit of respite there, but the Lions, they're not chopped liver up front either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if Jason Peters, it's very apparent that he can't handle speed rushing right now. Yeah. And so is that something that he can expect more of, or the Lions have seen on tape?
Yeah, and they brought in Charles Harris, and I didn't think much of it, and he didn't play all that great in the preseason. He played really, really well last week. He can fly around the edge, he can corner, but he did a great job of playing that outside contained rush, where I'm going to beat the tackle around the outside shoulder, but I'm still not going to give Lamar an escape. They did a phenomenal job at that. I cannot commend what Aaron Glenn designed that enough. And I think you're going to see a lot of the similar concepts going against Justin Fields, who, from my impression of him anyways, isn't as willing to run as what Lamar is, but can run if you ask him to. And I think if he doesn't run a little bit more and take some more chances at that, and help his offensive line out a little bit on those, it could be a long day for him again.
It could be a long day for everybody who's cheering for the Chicago Bears, but I digress. You did mention the cornerbacks a little bit. I do want to kind of preview them a little bit for Bears fans, because if the pocket does get clean a few times, or they are able to throw the ball down the field a little bit, are there going to be opportunities? Because Allen Robinson has not kickstarted himself yet. Darnell Mooney, the blazing speed, has not broken free yet. They have speed with Marquise Goodwin and Bird, and they bring in all this speed, but they have not pushed the ball down the field really at all this season. Could there be opportunities with that hyper-aggressive defense? If they're able to pick up some blitzes, will there be opportunities down the field?
Yeah, absolutely. The starting outside cornerbacks, and the graphics up there for those of you watching, Amani Oruwariye and Bobby Price. Oruwariye he might be PFF's worst corner. If he's not, he's close to it, and he belongs there. He did have a great interception last week, where he sort of baited Lamar Jackson into something. That was the first interception of the season for the Lions. That was late in the game. That sort of tells you where they're at. Look, Jeff Okudah is gone. Ifeatu Melifonwu, their third-round rookie, who has some talent and can play, is also gone. They're both out. Bobby Price was an undrafted safety from Norfolk State. He played safety until the day before the first preseason game this year. He never played corner a second in his life. He's a starting outside corner right now. He's long, and he's a great athlete. And he did his best. He did better than you would expect of a guy that just meets that the description against Baltimore. But he is vulnerable. He's young. He doesn't have the instincts or the eyes with it yet. They get no help from their safeties. Will Harris in coverage is an absolute liability. He's an atrocity back there in coverage. He's never gotten better at it. He's okay in the box. He can cheat up and take away your tight end or a running back out of the backfield. But if he's involved in coverage against your wide receiver has the advantage. It doesn't matter if they're bracketing or whatever. Tracy Walker is the other safety. Kind of a disappointment for me personally. I've really liked the guy. I've kind of trumpeted him up. He just hasn't lived up to it. He actually split some time with Dean Marlowe last week. Their slot corner is undrafted rookie AJ Parker. I got to bring him up. He is the best cornerback on the team right now. This is a guy. He wasn't even good at Kansas State. I remember watching Kansas State games after they signed him. I went back and watched a little bit. I'm like, look at this guy. He's actually played pretty darn well. He got victimized on a bad switch last week, but again, with all the youth, and that's the thing. If you give your quarterback protection, whoever your quarterback is, if it's Andy Dalton coming back, if it's Nick Foles, I don't see that happening, but you're going to have the ability to take those shots because the secondary, look, they're young, they're energetic, they're eager, but they're completely inexperienced, and it's going to be, there are opportunities to be taken. The Ravens left a lot. Marquise Brown dropped 2 perfect Lamar Jackson passes, hit both hands, both would have been touchdowns. He left them both on the field. Sammy Watkins dropped a touchdown pass where he beat Price over the top. One of the best throws you will ever see from Lamar Jackson, and hit him in the hand and dropped it. So there are opportunities to be taken there. You got to take advantage of it. I'm a big Allen Robinson fan. I wanted him to come to Detroit. It's his home. Wanted him to get back there to help the receiving core out. He will have opportunities. I shamelessly say this. I hope he gets some because I like the guy. He's a good receiver, and he's being wasted a little bit. I would like to see some production out of him.
No kidding. He's on that franchise tag. He's trying to get paid, and he might have enough. He might have had enough of Chicago, so you might still get your wish down the line. I do want to bring in Aldo Gandia. Aldo, you've been interacting with the chat room a little bit. You've been stewing on some questions of your own. Do you have anything for Jeff before we cut him loose?
I do, absolutely. I'll begin with Chubbs asking, how is Nick Williams doing in Detroit? I follow him on social media. He's one of my favorite Bears.
Good question. He's played well, especially the last 2 weeks. Got off to a little bit of a slow start. He did not have a good 2020. I'm going to chalk that up to the fact that he actually has some personality to him, and Matt Patricia hates anybody that has any personality whatsoever. He made football purposely boring and awful. And he also, Nick is now playing more of the 5 technique, and I think that suits his game a little bit better. I think he has a sack and a half. Played very well this past week. Played very well against San Francisco. So he, this is a guy that he's a fun guy. I think Michael Brockers is a little older, but those are the 2 oldest guys on the defense now. That sort of tells you where the Lions are at age wise. He's a welcome veteran. He's a guy that a lot of Lions fans, quite frankly, didn't expect to make it this year. And earned his way onto the team with a good preseason and a good attitude. And good veteran mentorship for the young guys around him. Look, they drafted Levi Onwuzurike, Aleem McNeil. They brought in Jayshon Cornell is coming back this week off suspension. Didn't play last year as a rookie because he tore his Achilles. Nick is a very good guy for those type of players, and he can still play too. So yeah, good question.
Yeah, and Ravi asked about Cephas. He was really good at Wisconsin. Do you expect him to grow in his role with the Lions?
He's probably being asked too much as the number 1 or number 2 receiver. But if he's your number 3 outside receiver, you're going to be okay. And that's sort of what he was last year when he was behind Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones. He's got talent. He's got a limited ceiling, but I think his floor is high enough that he can be a productive receiver. I'm going to say he's going to wind up with around 50 to 60 catches this year, probably close to 100 targets. Nothing special, not anything that your fantasy team would need. But a quality wide receiver. He's going to play in the league for a long time. Probably never be a star. And he honestly probably shouldn't start, but he's certainly a useful player.
Roy has a great question. How did the Lions put together a rather impressive defensive game plan against Lamar Jackson in Baltimore after giving up 41 and 35 to San Francisco and Green Bay, respectively?
Okay, I will give you the diplomatic answer was that they started to get they figured things out a little bit better. Their communication was better. The number one thing that they did was they yanked Jamie Collins and his slow ass out of the lineup and sent him packing. He was awful, guys. And so I covered him in Cleveland when he absolutely quit on that team when they weren't winning. That was not the case with Jamie Collins this time around. He just doesn't have it anymore. He was legitimately trying. His attitude was so much better. I saw it firsthand. He just can't run anymore. And the fact that they took him out and put in guys that can run, and they also did that at cornerback a little bit too. Bobby Price can run a lot. They have more speed now on the field. Bringing Dean Marlowe in, I think, helped with the speed. The emphasis on being faster, honestly, it made a huge difference against that. And you also have to take in the fact the Ravens did not play well. They left points on the field, much like the Browns did against the Bears. You know, with those two fourth downs in the first half. If those don't happen, the Browns win, 40-6, not 26-6. So it's a similar situation to that too. I don't want to give the Lions defense too much credit because the Ravens did not have their A game, and that needs to be emphasized too.
My final question is, you said you watched the Bears-Browns tape a couple of times, and so I've read your stuff and heard you on podcast now for many years and really respect your evaluation of players. So what's your evaluation of the Chicago Bears?
I think their defense can win games and carry an offense that that can hold serve. But right now that offense is a mess. Schematically, look, I won't pile on Nagy because I don't know the dynamics of what's going on in that locker room. But what I saw was an offense that doesn't understand what personnel it has. When you've got tackles like that, how do you leave Jason Peters alone against Myles Garrett? How do you leave Jermaine Ifedi alone? The one sack, the Tack McKinley touched Justin Fields 1.79 seconds after the snap. That can't happen. That's not your quarterback's fault. That's not Jermaine Ifedi's fault. That's your scheme's fault. If you don't upgrade that offensive scheme, you're going to waste a defense that I'm not going to say that they're elite, but that look, they got some dudes up front. In Detroit Lions podcast land, having dudes is good. The Bears have some dudes, and I like Jaleel Johnson on the outside. I think he's becoming a pretty darn good corner. The window's closing on that group, but that offense has slammed it completely shut. You're asking a whole lot out of that defense, and I think you saw in the Cleveland game, the defense was like, "What's the point here?" And Detroit fans know that very well from the Matthew Stafford era, and when they had Calvin Johnson. And when they were, when Stafford was, throwing for 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns, and they still won 4 games, it's very, very tough to have a one-sided football team that can only win if one side of the ball is absolutely perfect. Your defense can be close to that, but until that offense improves, sorry, man, it ain't there.
It's been one-sided for 40 years, Jeff. I think we're starting to get used.
It's weird because in Detroit, it's mostly been the defense that's been the problem, and the offense has been okay, and it's sort of flipped with Chicago. But
it's something about the North. Can't get it. Oh, and yeah, so there's another question there. What fans' reaction to the 66-yard field goal is just like, really? If you're gonna set a record, it's gonna be against us. I assume there was the attitude toward
yeah. So the last time that Justin Tucker came to Detroit was a Monday Night Football game in 2013, and he hit a 61-yarder with under a minute to go. And so we were like 66 yards. Come on. And then it hit the goalpost. And so Bears fans know this very well. The goalposts in Ford Field are not typically friendly to the opposing team. And then it banked in. Look, it's a phenomenal kick. I love, from a neutral fan standpoint, it's freaking amazing that he made it. I loved seeing it, but it happened after a delay of game penalty that they missed, which drove me absolutely. So I'm like shaking in visceral anger that they missed the penalty. And then the field goal happens. And I'm like, I want to celebrate. Like, I just witnessed history. But God, happened against my team.
Yep.
It was rough. Most people took to blaming the refs, and they don't take it too much on Justin Tucker because what he did, damn, dude.
What are you gonna do? It was a doink of destiny. That's basically what it came down to.
If you tell Dan Campbell said it, it's like if their game plan is to kick a 66-yard field goal to beat us, I'm going to let them try to run that plan.
Sure,
it happened.
And it happened. It is what it is, and it just seems like that's the luck of the NFC North moving forward. But Jeff, before we kick you out of here, please let our fans know, and all of our listeners, our watchers know how they can connect with you on social media, how they can watch your stuff, how they can listen to your stuff, how they can read your stuff, because you cover a lot more than just straight up Lions stuff. There's a lot more to digest there.
Yeah, I do. I'm the managing editor for the Lions Wire at USA Today. I also did the Browns Wire as the managing editor for 4 seasons. I stepped back from that, but I do still write there. That's why I watched the Bears game with such interest this past weekend. You can find me on the Detroit Lions podcast. Exactly that. We did a YouTube. We streamed it last night. We interviewed Dean Blandino, the former NFL director of officiating. He now works for Fox as a rules analyst. And we talked to him about a lot of things. And it was a great conversation. So check that out. It's on YouTube. You can find it at your podcast providers as well. I do radio here. I live right across the water from Milwaukee in West Michigan. So I'm on the radio in Grand Rapids quite a bit. You can also find my work. I do general stuff, NFL and NFL draft stuff, which is actually my most fun thing to do at Real GM, footballrealgm.com. Please check that out. And you can always get me on Twitter at Jeff Risdon. That's Risdon. It's all one word together. Thank you.
Sounds good. Well, he's the managing editor over at Lions Wire, Jeff Risdon. Jeff, we really appreciate you being on, and we will talk to you down the road.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We'll be back with more Buffone 55 after this.
The Barroom Network presents 2 fired up Bears fans. They are ready to rumble on the Bear Debate.
Welcome back to Buffone 55. Now it's time for our B55 segment. That's when I ask John 5 questions, and his response must be completed within 55 seconds. This is John's way of paying tribute to his uncle, Doug Buffone, who played 15 seasons with the Bears and wore number 55. John, are you ready to go?
I'm ready. I'm really ready for this week.
All right. I've got some tough ones for you, so you better really bring it, all right? Everybody's counting.
Let's do it. I'm sure.
So Justin Fields' debut didn't go as planned. The young quarterback was sacked 9 times, and Bears only managed 1 net yard passing. John, I know you're not a Matt Nagy apologist, anything but an apologist for Matt Nagy, but what do you think needs to be the attitude towards the Bears head coach in Hallis Hall? You got 55 seconds, brother.
Listen, we have been waiting for the last straw for 2 years. When is it going to happen? The head coach has exposed himself as a fraud so many times, and what he did to Justin Fields last Sunday was a fireable offense on its own. He looks lost, he sounds lost, and all the cliches in the world are not going to save him in the end. That was a pathetic performance, and we are to the point now where no matter who the Bears play, they will be outcoached, and that includes the kneecap-biting psychopath that is the head coach of the Detroit Lions right now. I'd rather play for Dan Campbell than Matt Nagy. He had 5 months to cater an offensive scheme around Justin Fields, and that's what he trotted out. That game plan would have been the same for Andy Dalton. It would have been the same for Nick Foles. It would have been the same for Mitchell Trubisky. There wasn't one creative use of Justin Fields' skills against the Browns last Sunday. Do not let Matt Nagy ruin Justin Fields.
Wow. 4,000 Glover says, John, how badly do you want to power drive Matt Nagy?
Figuratively, more than you can imagine.
That's a great response, though, because I think you perfectly captured there the frustration that the Chicago Bears fans have with the head coach of the Bears. And let's move on quickly now to question number 2. In his press conference on Monday, Matt Nagy said everything is on the table. That isn't very specific, and he wasn't much more specific today. What do you actually hope was on the table and the changes that we should see Sunday in the matchup against the Lions? You got 55 seconds, brother.
Well, the change I'd like to see is for Matty the Clown and his 3-ring circus to leave town, but I don't think that's going to happen quite yet. What I would like to see, though, is Bill Lazor calling plays. I wish I had a job where I could just fire myself and then bring myself back for no apparent reason. Schematically, though, I would like to see Justin Fields moving outside the pocket a little bit more. I would like to see more screen plays to compensate for the poor offensive line, and maybe see some designed plays for Justin Fields' athleticism. What I think we're going to get is more end-arounds and shovel passes, and maybe the ultimate Matt Nagy move would be to start Nick Foles. That would be the ultimate deflection move, and he'd basically be saying, I told you Justin wasn't ready. Let me bring in Nick to save the day. Guys, we have been asking for changes and adjustments for 3 years. This is the guy who gave up play calling only when they were on a 6-game losing streak and the team was falling apart, and then he still took it back. He thinks this is a good system. He wants to run this.
Yeah, he does want to run it. He is one stubborn SOB. I mean, there's just no way around it. So he would not let people know today what decision was made as to who was going to call the plays. Now, when I spoke with Greg Gabriel, the former Bears scouting director, about that on the show this morning, Gabriel Talks Football, he said that that is part of the competitive advantage, and that you don't want to let the Lions know, because they'll go back and look at the tape of all the games that Lazor called the game to help them better prepare. That it's obscuring their preparation, for lack of a better way of putting it. Do you agree with that?
Listen, I respect what Greg Gabriel has to say, but I'm tired of the Bears pretending like they're protecting the nuclear codes. I'm tired of the Bears pretending like they have something worth guarding. I honestly just think that Matt Nagy doesn't want to tell people who's calling the plays, because if they win on Sunday, he doesn't want people to think that Bill Lazor was calling the plays. Yeah, I think if they go out and they put up a bunch of points and Bill Lazor was calling plays, Matt Nagy doesn't want that to be an indictment on him, so he's just going to say, I'm not telling you who was calling the plays. Maybe it was me. Maybe it was Bill Lazor. I'm not going to tell you either way. And so if they go out and they score a bunch of points, maybe it was me. It could have been Bill. But no, I just think it's more BS, and we've just been eating this for too long.
And I hate to eat BS. All right, let's move on to question 3. After the game on Sunday, Bears tight end Jimmy Graham retweeted stats that showed the Bears gained 1 point yard per play, and that it was the second worst yards per average in the last century. Now, Matt Nagy has always been perceived as a player's coach, but do you think Graham's public act is the start of something? The clock starts when you do, brother.
Well, it's not like this hasn't happened before. Nick Foles got into it with him on the sideline last year, and then last week got caught on the sideline saying this offense doesn't work. And that's in your quarterback room. Those are the guys who are closest to Justin Fields. But as far as the Jimmy Graham thing goes, he has played with some great quarterbacks. Drew Brees, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, and he has played on some really, really good offenses. And I'm sure he knows when an offense is dysfunctional. And if you're a player's coach and you have guys taking subtle jabs at you and your offense sucks and you can't win games, what's your redeeming quality? What do you actually bring to the table as a head coach? Imagine how Allen Robinson feels. This guy averaged 100 catches the last 2 years, and he's on pace for 57, and they added an extra game. This guy is on the franchise tag trying to get paid. Imagine his thoughts towards Matt Nagy in that offense right now.
Yeah, I think Allen Robinson has some bad feelings towards Matt Nagy, and Brandon Parker, A-Rob's agent, is probably not very happy with the state of affairs at Hallis Hall and with Matt Nagy's offense. No doubt about that. Question number 4, switching to the defense now. They actually held the Browns in check for a large portion of that matchup. I was there. They did a fantastic job, and it was a one-score game heading into the fourth quarter. What was your evaluation of the defensive effort, and is this a sign of things to come? You are on the clock.
Well, what's sad is that the defense played its heart out against the Browns. That was a one-score game going into the fourth quarter. But you can only do so much. This isn't the 2018 Bears, but it was a defense that deserved to win the football game. They had 5 sacks, but the only thing that's going to be remembered is that the offense had 1 net passing yard and they gave up 9 sacks. So I fear that this defense is going to spend too much time on the field, and eventually someone's going to get hurt. There's going to be multiple injuries, and they have 0 offensive support. So if they let up for just 1 second, this team is going to get throttled. This defense cannot keep picking up the check for Matt Nagy. The pass rush looked improved. Robert Quinn actually looked good. Roquan Smith and Jalen Johnson are establishing themselves as household names, but it doesn't mean a damn thing if you only score 6 points. What do you know? Chicago wasting another year of a solid defense. Nothing new.
Boy, you nailed that. I love the line, keep picking up the check from Matt Nagy. Yeah, they not only are picking up the check, but they're driving him to the parking lot,
Yes.
paying for the Uber or whatever it is. They're just going way beyond the Call of Duty. And one of the lasting memories that I will have of witnessing that debacle in Cleveland was just seeing the expression of those defensive players, how dejected they were, how tired they were, how hurt many of them were physically, probably emotionally too. That was really, really sad to see.
It is. It sucks. It's year after year you see the defense, and now they've clearly taken a step back from where they were a few years ago, but to see that defense, and in the NFL today, you don't need a dominant defense. I've said this before. I think Bears fans get brainwashed to think that they have to have a top 2 defense in order for them to be successful. No, you have to have a good defense, because in today's NFL, a lot of points are scored. The only difference is the Bears don't score a lot of points, so they have to have that top 5 dominant defense. So it's just unfortunate to see a defense that you could really win some games with just wasted.
There you go. All right, our final question. I'm going to turn off the clock for this one, okay? You were heated up after the Bears lost to the Browns on the Bear Football post-game show, after-game show. Yeah, you were heated up more than usual. The veins were popping out. There were tons of comments in the chat room. Look at those veins popping out of the neck. They're going to blow. Now that you've had some time to settle down, hit the bag, do some cardio, do some curls, all that stuff, do you think that Bears fans who were behaving like you were are overreacting to this one game? Or is this the kind of vitriol the Bears organization can expect from all their fans this season? The clock is off, brother.
Overreacting. Absolutely not. I will not be force-fed the status quo anymore with this organization. I'm tired of hearing about the whys. I'm tired of going back and looking at the tape. I'm tired of hearing about how good practice was, and I'm tired of being told where we're at. It's all nonsense. It's all garbage. I'll tell you where we're at. We're a franchise that can't get the GM role figured out. We're a franchise that can't seem to hire a strong head coach, and we're a franchise that has to talk about accolades that happened 36 years ago. Newsflash, no one is Super Bowl shuffling anymore. The song is finished. Turn the tape over. There has been systemic mediocrity in Chicago for 4 decades. Hire some football people that can run the damn franchise and get someone in there that can lead some men to a championship. Are we overreacting? Hell no. Every year we aim for just good enough. Well, if we can get to 9 wins, maybe we can squeak into the playoffs. You think they do that crap in Green Bay, in Pittsburgh, in New England? They may not win every game, but they sure as hell expect to win. The standard that has been set for this franchise is embarrassing. Overreacting. I just wish someone in the front office would react. That'll do it for the B55 segment. We'll be back with Buffone's Basement after this.
Baseball at the Bar Room. On Monday nights, get ready for the Friendly Confines Extra Innings. It's 30 minutes, it's clever, it's concise, and it's all Cubs coverage. That's followed by a killer White Sox show, South Burbs Hitmen. Then on Thursday afternoon, it's Cubs and Sox opinions and analysis with Crosstown Crosstalk. Baseball at the Bar Room. Join us live and or on demand.
Welcome back to Buffone 55. It's time for the Buffone's Basement segment where we just have a free-for-all talking Bears. Aldo Gandia is going to jump into this conversation. And with us tonight is Neil Stopchinski. You may know him from the Draft on Tap and the Bar Room Network. Neil, how you doing? Appreciate you being on.
I appreciate it, guys. It's been a while. How about that? Every day's an adventure right now, isn't it? Absolutely unbelievable what we had to witness on Sunday and what we've been dealing with in terms of press conferences ever since, post-game Sunday. Today was even as laughable as it was on Sunday. So it's, we just keep on, rolling down the hill. That's what it seems like, right?
Yeah.
We're on a perpetual motion machine is what it seems like. But I do want to open this conversation about Matt Nagy. And a lot of people are thinking that he's not going to make it out of the season. Some people claiming that if he loses to Detroit, the seat could be ultimately hot. I want to, Neil, you're the newcomer right now, so I want to go to you first. Do you see any scenario that Matt Nagy doesn't make it out of this season?
That's the interesting thing, man. Is I think I saw the same thing that you saw popping up. I was just scrolling up, through Twitter, earlier this week. It might have been yesterday. I'm not sure who it was that said it, but it was somebody that allegedly has connections within the 4 walls of Hallis Hall and this sort of fortress of this fortress of good opinions that were built up around Matt Nagy over the course of the past, 3.5 years is all of a sudden a little bit weaker and or non-existent at this point. Again, I mean, you just gotta you take it with a grain of salt, right? It's one of those things you can't really take it until something actually happens. But gotta be honest, guys, Sunday felt different. Sunday felt about as incompetent as it's ever felt. I've been on I've been on staffs where there's a season or two where everything just feels like the wheels are completely off, and you're just holding on to your ass to try to you're just like treading water so you don't drown, right? And that's kind of how I feel where we're at right now. If these guys go up in Detroit and get curb stomped, I would not be surprised if Nagy gets the axe on Monday. If we go through the rest of the season looking as incompetent at times as we did on Sunday, he'll be gone by Black Friday, or I should say Black Monday, the Monday after Black Friday.
Yeah,
I would not be surprised. I know it's bizarre to think of that because this franchise, this administration, historically they let the coach ride throughout the year, right? They just let him suffer and suffer until the year's over. Then they give him the axe. But I would not be surprised if they were a little bit more on the front end of things this time.
Aldo, you have been someone who thought that Matt Nagy going into the season was not only safe this year, but potentially safe next year. And you actually kind of brought me over to your side of the road at one point where I was believing that. Now I'm starting to waffle back to where I was originally at. But for someone that thought that there was a 2-year deal in place with the McCaskies and Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy, where are you at with this?
Well, certainly when I said that, I didn't anticipate the catastrophe in Cleveland. But nonetheless, I think that this team is still good enough that they're going to win some games. And even despite the fact that the schedule is going to get tougher for a good portion of the middle of the season and into the last quarter of the season. But I still think that it's going to take a lot for management to fire Matt Nagy. And right now it's a two-headed monster. It's Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy. They're joined at the hip. So if Ted Phillips, George McCaskey, if they insist to Ryan Pace that he fire Matt Nagy as coach, then what happens? Then is the handwriting on the wall for that Ryan Pace won't come back in 2022? I don't know. But I just think that the management is going to see that a smoother transition to whatever they want to do in the future is if those two guys stay together. I hate to say it, but that's the case. Hopefully now we won't have any more debacles like the one against the Browns.
We'll see. And I think Neil's right. I think this next, coming off of an embarrassment like that, this game will be another barometer. So Neil, I do want to ask you this, and I'm glad you're on for this because this week has launched a big social media, I don't want to say debate, but along the lines of should Bears fans or should Chicago be apologizing to Mitchell Trubisky because they see what Justin Fields did and they say, well, look, Mitch never had a chance then. Maybe it was all the coach, and maybe when Mitch catches on somewhere, he's going to live up to that potential they thought he was going to live up to. I'm of the mindset that you could not get it done and the coach is bad. I think both can be possible. But you're really into the evaluation process when it comes to guys coming out of college. I am assuming that you think that Nagy didn't do Trubisky any favors, but could things have gone differently with a different head coach?
Potentially. I think with the way you got to look at it is we're talking about a comparison of 4 quarters versus 4 years, right, guys? I mean, over the course of a body of work as long as 4 years is, I understand Uncle Mike is pound the table, and acting very victorious over the fact right now that Justin Fields looked as terrible as arguably Mitch Trubisky has over the course of his career here. But I mean, we got to be honest. There was no semblance of improvement over the entire course of those 4 years. If anything, there was regression, which is a scary thing. I have to imagine that this has to be the low of Justin Fields, and it's only going to get better as this goes forward. I mean, you name me a quarterback besides Peyton Manning that looked even remotely competent in his first NFL game. Peyton Manning passed for 300 plus and had a touchdown. Granted, he threw 3 picks, but he at least kept Indianapolis in the game until they eventually folded because their defense was garbage in 1998, right? So I mean, I know that's kind of like an extreme comparison comparing to one of the greatest of all time, arguably number 2 or 3 of all time. But what other rookie quarterback right now looks great? Trevor Lawrence looks like garbage, and Zach Wilson looks like garbage. And I was as big of a fist pounder for Zach Wilson as anybody else. But I mean, I gotta be honest, guys. Like when both of those guys went to those organizations, I knew they were going to a dumpster fire, and that scares me because we've seen highly touted and talented quarterbacks go to dumpster fire organizations in the past, and it just completely wrecks them. And so I think let's not say that let's not completely compare the whole Justin Fields 4 quarters to 4 years quite just yet. I mean, I think we still have yet to see Mitch Trubisky really play some serious minutes in Buffalo. So until Mitch Trubisky really starts producing outside of the city of Chicago, I'm just going to go ahead and temper my emotions on how bad Mitch Trubisky got underserved here in Chicago.
Very, very pragmatic approach. You can appreciate that.
Yeah. I do think, though, that Matt Nagy didn't do Mitchell Trubisky any favors. I mean, I have been looking at the tape of this Cleveland Browns game, and but I haven't been studying the all 22 as if I was an expert. I've been following other experts evaluating that tape, and the words that I keep hearing are old concepts, lack of scheme. Now, Justin Fields on these evaluations was blamed heavily too. Held on to the ball too long. There was an open man over here. He can't expect wide open receivers like he did at Ohio State. He's got to force that ball. The receiver has a half step on the defender. He's got to let go. But I kept hearing poor scheming, poor route concepts. There's absolutely nobody open because the scheming was wrong. And I think that is part of what happened to Mitchell Trubisky too. And it wasn't until Bill Lazor took over the play calling duties. Now, I know that the 3 victories that Trubisky had late in the season were against terrible defenses. And then in the final 2 games, the playoff game and the regular season finale, he faced good defenses and didn't play very well. But nonetheless, and some people could argue that was Matt Nagy's fault because Matt Nagy by that time took over the play calling duties. But nonetheless, when Lazor took over, I think all 3 of us and so many other people are in agreement that Trubisky played well, that the offense was better suited for him. And then when we saw him in that preseason game, and again, I underline it's preseason, when he played with the Bills at Soldier Field, he did all of the things that Matt Nagy should have been having him do in Chicago, the rollout plays, getting the ball rid of more quickly, not trying to force him to be a pocket passer, but having a scheme suitable to his strengths. So Neil knows a lot more about football than I ever will. So, if anyone's going to bet on an opinion, bet on his. But I do think, my opinion is that I do think that Nagy did not do Trubisky any favors.
Yeah, and I think that once again, I think there are 2, and like we see in the chat room, 2 truths can exist, and so it was something that needed a lot of coaching, and the coaching simply was detrimental as well. It just wasn't going to work. It was a bad combination. But I want to stick with the quarterback. I want to talk about the quarterback situation a little bit more. Justin Fields dings up his hand. Sounds like he's okay to go. We don't know what the real big status of Andy Dalton is. That people are floating out. The fact that we're even floating out the idea that Nick Foles could start makes me queasy. Neil, do you think there's any possibility that Justin Fields doesn't start against the Detroit Lions?
I hope and pray he starts, because if it's another situation, another Nick Foles experiment, is jam and ice pick in my retina. I'm done. I'm over the Nick Foles experiment stuff. I mean, we've seen how terrible that marriage of Matt Nagy and Nick Foles has been already. Please, the thing is, Justin's already been at the podium and said he's fine. I'm sure that by the time we hit Thursday and Friday, he's going to be 100%. He's going to be going through the motions. He's going to be, preparing as though he's going to be QB1 come, Sunday. I'm not really too concerned about that. But if we trot number 9 out there, I might as well just turn the TV off. It's over, and we might see heads roll on Monday. But I mean, to be honest,
healthy? If Dalton's healthy, what if Dalton's healthy?
If Dalton's healthy, I wouldn't be surprised if he puts Dalton out there. And the one thing that I can't remember who I heard it from this week. I actually heard it a couple times, and it sort of vindicated one of the thoughts that I had. But I thought I was being a tinfoil on my head guy when I thought about it. But what if Nagy's just doing this on purpose, just to say, just to hammering the point? I told you Justin's not ready. He can't go out there and perform the what if he's really just trying to ride this season out with Dalton because he's going to be able to have less headaches with an experienced quarterback of 11 years that, has, been to the playoffs and everything else, a veteran, and just allows Justin Fields to ride those coattails, man. I heard a couple other people say it. I think actually Tyler said it the other night.
Yeah. You did, yeah.
And, he was one of like 3 people I heard say it. I was like, good. I'm not the only one wearing the tinfoil hat. But that the fact I had to think about that, though, like how diabolical is this whole deal right now, where you're sitting there, looking at your TV, saying this literally can't be that bad.
Yeah, I don't think. Excuse me for interrupting, Neil. I don't think Nagy would commit a treasonous act like that. I do believe that he's not nearly as smart as he thinks that he is, and he's just plain stupid. I mean, who else would have the idea that left tackle who was fishing 5 weeks ago, he had his fishing pole in the lake and had not worked out at all during the off season? Who had the idea that he could go one-on-one with Myles Garrett? Now, Juan Castillo deserves some of the blame for that. And Juan Castillo told Mark Grody after the game, Mark, everybody has a bad day. You have had bad days at work. I know my wife has had bad days at the office. Everybody has a bad day. So today I'm just chalking it up to a bad day. That is utter BS. That really was not a bad day for Peters. That was a bad year of football thinking for everybody behind that whole thing. And I'll go back.
Certainly there were some bad moments for Peters though too. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
you're absolutely right.
Holy cow.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, he just doesn't have the lateral movement anymore. He can't get out to the second level. He can't handle speed rushers, as was talked about earlier in the show. Yeah, Peters is not ready to take on he'd be a good backup a tackle, but he's not can't play at the starter level. So,
but why is he there? Why is he there? Because the plan they
Best
put
option
in
available.
Yeah, right. He's there because whatever they thought they were doing didn't work. They said we're going all in. We're bringing in Tevin Jenkins. We're drafting him. He's going to start day one. Maybe Larry Borum will be a spot starter on the right side, and then you know what? That's good enough. We're good. We're gonna get rid of our starters. We're just gonna make change for the sake of changing, and then oh crap. Tevin Jenkins' back problems come back up. Larry Borum gets hurt. Oh, crap. Who's left? Oh, Jason Peters. Okay, he just applied for AARP, but you know what? He can start be a starting left tackle now. So this is just another one of those things where it's just let's just try this. Let's see what this does, and it just blew up in their face. Like so many other things have happened, just blew up in their face.
Just throwing crap against the wall at this point.
Yep.
Yeah,
kind of how a lot of stuff feels.
Let me ask. Let me ask you guys for your opinion at this point. If we continue to see poor performances in the next few weeks, and it's clear that this is not a playoff team, and I'm still holding out hope that they can sneak into the playoffs. But if we know for sure, all right, there's just no way this is a playoff team. Do you then bubble wrap guys like Justin Fields and even Tevin Jenkins, if he's cleared to play, bubble wrap him because those guys are part of the future and you don't want to throw them out there and risk potential long-term injury, and you just let veterans play and let them finish out the season? You guys have a feeling on that one way or another?
Honestly, I think that you got to keep playing Justin Fields just to get him the reps. I think that you have to keep getting him experience. I know the offensive line is really bad, and it's almost, but there's a risk of getting hurt in every game that you go out there. But maybe for Tevin Jenkins, maybe you do shut him down for the season because that's a high impact position. And if his back needs to completely heal, you know what? Put him on the shelf till next year if they're completely out of the playoff scene, which I anticipate will happen this year. But as far as Justin Fields, we see a lot of rookie quarterbacks be on really bad teams, and they need that experience to go through the progressions, find their rhythm, understand the offense a little bit better. Now he probably will have, hopefully he'll have a different head coach next year, so he don't learn too much of the playbook. That might hurt you, but at least understand the game. Might understand the game speed of the NFL a little bit better, understand reads a little bit better. I'll defer to Neil on that, but I just think that your rookie quarterback needs to get some more of those reps before you just shelf him.
He does need the reps. I'm with you on that. I'm scared as hell of damaging the kid right now, because I think we've already seen and I hope it doesn't become a trend, but the way that adjustments were made during the course of that Cleveland Browns game, I'm scared to hell for the kid.
Yeah.
I mean, these young guys, sometimes they just need to get out of the pocket and in some sort of a comfort zone. And when Justin Fields is on the move, just moving the pocket or just, being, off platform, that is a little bit of a comfort zone for him. I always said on Draft on Tap, during my evaluation of Justin Fields, like the thing that I loved about him was that, he is a pass first quarterback. He's not like Lamar Jackson or Michael Vick or some of these other guys that would come straight into the league, Steve Young, and just like make one read and take off automatically. But the thing about it is, guys, is that from the first snap, Justin Fields did not look comfortable, and Matt Nagy did not look like he was in any position to get him to feel comfortable. He did not call he did not call screenplays. He did not call bubbles. He didn't roll the pocket. We knew this offensive line was Swiss cheese. We knew it was a cardboard. It was a cardboard barrier. Going into this, I think I saw a graphic. Justin Fields had an average of 0.78 seconds to fire the ball off on Sunday. An average of 0.78 seconds. At least Tom Brady has 3, and he's the best of all time. But he had 0.78 seconds. You give any rookie like 0.78 seconds to throw, and he's going to have an absolutely horrendous, atrocious outing like we saw. But the thing about it is that you got to get this kid comfortable from the very beginning of the game. Get him in a situation where he's at least completing the ball. He builds up his confidence. I tweeted out something during the October 2017. I think it was October 9th, 2017, is when Mitch got his first start under John Fox. Right, Mitch ended up going 12-25, 128, 1-1 for just a marginal 60.1 quarterback rating. The difference is 26 design runs were called to at least take the pressure off of Mitchell Trubisky throughout the course of that game. That running back was Jordan Howard, one of my favorites of all time in a Bears uniform, personally. Matt Nagy called 10 design run plays on Sunday. Arguably your best player on offense touched the ball 11 total times, including the one pass he caught, which was under duress and completely chaotic. So, I mean, that's what has to happen, guys. The drop back thing and just, throwing in like baptism by fire type of stuff. Yeah, that works, but you got to at least get the kid comfortable, get him in a rhythm to at least feel like he's going to be able to move the ball down the field without taking shots.
I never thought that I would have to look back at a Dowell Loggins offense and be like, wow, that was the right thing to do. But here we are years later, and we're talking about, wow, I wish they would have did what Dowell Loggins did with Mitch Trubisky. And so that's kind of where we are right now. So I do want to go and Otto, I'll start with you. If they lose to the Lions, what do you think will happen, if anything?
Well, I think that's when, a lot depends on how they lose, right? If it's a terrible looking defeat a la against the Browns, then, you're going to have the city on fire, just like the Chicago Fire. And so the cries for Nagy's head are going to be at such a high level that management just can't ignore them. They'll have to address it either by the general manager addressing the media, or one way that a team deals with situations like that is they start to leak out information that the Bears are going to make a coaching change at the end of the year to help placate fans. And there have been some media reports already, although the sources that I've seen those media reports already are not reliable. But when you see a credentialed beat reporter reporting those suspicions, then that is probably because the Bears management is trying to placate fans. But if the loss to the Lions is a close game and the team plays relatively well and hard, and you can tell that the players are still playing hard for Matt Nagy, then nothing happens. They'll just make adjustments, and we'll still hear more of that word soup that we all have come to abhor from Matt Nagy, and that's the twilight zone we'll be living in.
Neil, I was going to ask you, if this offense gets back on track, you can we'll consider this a fill in the blank question. The Bears offense gets back on track if they what?
Well, again, like I was saying the last time I was on rant, uh, get the if Justin Fields is the one that is starting on Sunday, you got to get the kid comfortable. Get the ball in Dave Montgomery's hands. Keep defenses honest. I mean, you already know the Lions are going to come out and fight and scratch and claw because that's the way Dan Campbell wants his players to play, and he's done a damn good job of getting them to play that way. To be honest with you, in 3 games, I mean, kneecaps and lats and quads and everything else. Guys might be missing a few of those, but they're playing their asses off, and that's the way that honestly we want our defense to play. And historically, our defensive personnel has been able to carry the load. It's the side of the ball with the big shoulders. Carrying the offense. I mean, you think about those Rex Grossman years, man. Like he the most schizophrenic quarterback of all time. Defense carry the load, guys, and we have a defense that's good enough to carry the load if our offense can at least just do their job, keep the ball moving down the field, and keep the other offense off the field, right? So, I mean, to be honest with you, we'll be okay on Sunday if Justin Fields is starting. Get the kid comfortable, get the ball in the hands of David Montgomery. He's arguably your best player in offense. Get Justin Fields some short stuff, some easy stuff early. Get that confidence up so that now he really starts getting a groove, starts feeling good about himself. Feel good, look good, play good, man. Yeah, it really truly is a thing. If Dalton's starting, I feel like what we did the first half against the Rams was not bad, guys. We moved the ball up and down the field, just 2 horrendous plays. Really put us behind the 8 ball going into the second half. And then Matt Nagy goes again, as true to form the past 3 years, takes the ball out of the hands of the running back. How many times did David Montgomery touch the ball in the second half against LA? 3? I don't know. I didn't go back and look at the stats, but the point is that this offense works when the ball is in the hands of David Montgomery and you go out from there. Sort of the same way the defense works when Akeem Hicks is on his game, you can get some outside pressure and you go from there. Just be even remotely offensively competent, and we'll be in good shape because the defense is good enough to carry the load.
Aldo, I'm going to ask this to both you guys. I'm going to start with you, Aldo. Right now, and this is kind of just an off-the-cuff question, would you rather have Matt Nagy as the head coach or Dan Campbell, which was a laughable question before the season, but now I'm actually asking it.
No, I definitely Dan Campbell. And you know what? Dan Campbell may not be any smarter or a better football coach than Matt Nagy, but I saw Campbell's press conference after that loss Sunday to the Ravens, and I saw the emotion, and I saw the fight in him. I saw how much he cared. I mean, this guy has some Chicago in his blood. He reminds me of a Ditka type coach. And when you're losing, and when you're losing bad, and they did not lose bad against Baltimore, they were robbed. But when you're not having any success, you need a head coach there who visibly shows that he cares, as opposed to the head coach that we have seen after losses, where he's giving you all these cliches, the Y's and the BU's and all that stuff. And that just doesn't work in professional football. Matt Nagy might be a good college football coach at some Division II school, but he is clearly showing that he doesn't have the skill set to lead men at the professional football level.
Neil, would you rather have Campbell or Nagy?
Campbell. You said it all, though. Emotion, passion, those things don't just work at the pro level. They work at all levels of football. You have to have passion. You have to have emotion. You have to show you give a shit. Otherwise the players are going to tune out. Bland does not work at any level of football whatsoever. The players are not into bland. They're not into boring. They're not into, political correctness. And that's the only thing we've gotten really in press conferences, except for the post-draft press conference when everybody had smiles on their faces and it was sunshine and rainbows and everything else. All we've gotten is coach speak and word salads and just a bunch of bland and a bunch of blah. And that stuff just does not work. I mean, who the most revered coach in the history of the Chicago Bears? Who was it? It was Ditka. What do you have? Passion, fire. Name your favorite adjective. So, I know, Matt Campbell failed in Miami, but what coach hasn't failed in Miami since the end of Shula? he's being given a shot to sort of, reconcile something that was killed by a Diet Coke version of a Bill Belichick, regime. And, I think for the first time you're seeing, what happened was they got rid of all that corporate BS and they brought in a guy that gives a shit. And all you need a lot of times in the locker room is somebody to give a shit. I'm not saying that Nagy at one point didn't give a shit, but I think part of giving a shit is being really creative and having a game plan and making adjustments and just showing that you at least have something up here that's gonna, get us through a bad day. The other thing I was thinking about too, in terms of passion and emotion, and this is going way back to like before the season ended, or really, but kind of like before the draft. Anytime you would hear Ryan Pace speak, how dejected he always seemed, and I mean he still kind of does, to be honest with you. But the difference is that when you listen to Ryan Pace speak versus somebody like I'm blanking, GM of the Colts.
Mm-hmm.
Ursay, or not Ursay.
Greg Ballard.
Ballard. Chris Ballard.
Chris Ballard.
You listen to Chris Ballard talk, like he is engaging. He pulls you in. There's voice inflection, like authentically voice inflection.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard to get behind people that don't pull you into stuff. And I feel like a lot of this administration and this whole deal is just a bunch of smoke screens and everything else, and there's a lot of disingenuity. It's hard to get behind that, man. Yeah, at least Matt Campbell's gonna make me run through a freaking wall.
Yeah, give me a kneecap to bite. I will play for Dan. Yeah, I will play for Dan Campbell. We may be going in the wrong direction, but at least we'll be going there at 100 miles per hour, and that's what that's what I can appreciate. I do love some of the comments in the chat. I think one of them is I'd rather have Wile E. Coyote as the head coach. I think that should be a social media campaign. Who you would rather have as the head coach of the Chicago Bears than Matt Nagy? Just throw in whoever you like. You would rather have so and so than Matt Nagy as the head coach. I think that would be a fun little social media experience, because at least when the laughter would keep us from crying. So I think that's something fun that we could do. Guys, before we get out of here, I do want to go around the horn for some final thoughts. Aldo, I'll start with you. Final thoughts about going into this game, where the Bears are at, and what's coming up on the network.
Yeah, first of all, I can't imagine that they're going to perform at that atrocious level against the Detroit Lions. I do expect that they are going to win at home in a close game. I hope that Justin Fields is the starter, and I hope that he shows some significant progression from his standpoint. Yes, first and foremost, the game plan has to be there for him to succeed, but I want him to see him do individual things that a young quarterback sometimes takes a while to achieve in the NFL. Things like getting rid of the ball more quickly, things like seeing the field a little bit more. And then tomorrow night's Bare Truth with Danny Shimon, we're going to go over some of that tape, where we will point out to you some of the scheme mistakes, but also some of the times where perhaps Justin Fields didn't see the field as he wanted to. So that will happen tomorrow night. Danny Shimon and myself with Bare Truth. Prior to that, Crosstown Crosstalk at 2 p.m. Vinny Parisi and Joy Parisi will talk about the Cubs. Lots of White Sox talk, of course, as they're heading into the playoffs, and they'll take a look at all the big Major League Baseball stories. Mike North has the day off tomorrow. He will be back next week. I'm sure he's very disappointed that he doesn't have an opportunity to come on and talk about Mitchell Trubisky. But so he's going to take a week off. He'll be back a week from tomorrow. We've got the Barfly Tailgate show on Sunday to get things off, and of course, Bear Football Sunday after the game.
Neil.
Just looking forward to some offensive competency this Sunday, guys. That's really it. Regardless of who's starting, if like I was saying, if we get Andy Dalton in there and we look more like the first half against the Rams, we can move the ball up and down the field. We look like we have a pulse. I'm gonna feel a hell of a lot better about the rest of that afternoon. But if we look like dog crap like we did on Sunday, man, it's going to be a rough day. There's going to be a lot of beers consumed. Just going to go ahead and tell you. A few shots of whiskey, and man, you're up. But the other thing too is like, we should have left Eddie Jackson on the tarmac on Sunday and just, told him to go find himself another team immediately. I'm officially done with Eddie Jackson. Like I haven't really been, on that boat already, but I'm about on that boat as much as I have been with Anthony Miller and Javon Wims. That one play when he actually decides he wants to be physical for the first time in 3 years and hip toss a guy out of bounds into the chain gang guy and damn near blow out his knee. That's the same type of ridiculous decision making, like foolish, selfish mentality stuff that we had to deal with Anthony Miller and Javon Wims. Like I'm done with guys that are me guys. Just get him out of there. He has no intention of tackling. He's a flashy big play, wannabe guy. Get him out of there. Get Deion Bush and Travis Gibson back there. Put those two guys back there would be a hell of a lot better because at least we have guys that actually want to make plays and be physical. That's all there is to that.
Appreciate you being on, Neil. My parting thought is I take a very holistic look when I talk about the Chicago Bears, and I'm not just talking about week 3. I'm talking about this year, last year, and all the years preceding it, and the years that we are going to be looking forward to. So when I'm talking about how angry I am and how angry Bears fans are, it's a culmination of things. It's not just reacting to last week. It's all of the things that we've gone through last year and the year before and probably the year before. So that being said, I'm just tired of this. I'm tired of the mediocrity. I'm tired of just being like, let's see if we can squeak into the playoffs. I said this week that Matt Nagy is probably the coach that I have been irritated at the most in my entire lifetime. And in my lifetime, there's been Dave Wannstedt, Dick Geron, Lovie Smith, Mark Trestman, John Fox. And I think that I despise Matt Nagy as a coach the most because that window of greatness was open and they never took advantage of it. They had a dominant defense in 2018 or a really good defenses since, and they just pissed it away. The opportunity was there for them to compete for years, and they have not. So that is why I'm so angry at this regime, because they squandered it. They squandered it. They had it. And as Denny Green would say, they let it off the hook. And that's why I'm so pissed off. And I'm going to continue to be pissed off. But you're going to get more of that emotion on Bear Football directly after the game. But for this edition of Buffone 55, that will about wrap it up. I appreciate everyone in the chat room, everyone who's listening to the live version, the downloaded version, any version, whether it's video or audio. Appreciate each and every one of you. And like I always say, whether it's your first time or your 55th time, I appreciate all of you listening to this show. But for Aldo Gandia and Neil Stopchinski, I'm John Buffone. We'll see you next week, everybody.
Thank you.